She stood at the edge of the enclosure, golden fur rippling like wheat in a summer breeze, her amber eyes locking onto the gate as it slid open. Every muscle in her sleek body tensed, tail flicking with barely contained energy. Could it really be him? After all these years? After all these years? The air felt electric, charged with a memory that neither time nor distance could erase, and in that moment, every witness held their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. But John's heart pounded harder than hers. 5 years earlier, he had walked away under orders he didn't understand, his hands trembling as he locked the gates behind him. Since then, late at night, he'd replayed the day he left, her soft growls of confusion, the way she nuzzled at his pocket, begging him to stay. Would she even remember him now? He stepped forward, boots crunching on gravel. The smell of straw and dry grass mingled with the faint, musky scent of her coat, familiar enough to bring tears to his eyes. Ooh, every footstep felt like walking through fog, memories swirling around him, the morning sun warming her back as he taught her to leap through hoops, the sharp snap of his whistle echoing through the training yard. Could a bond survive half a decade of silence? She took a tentative step toward him, ears swiveling at the sound of his voice. It was softer now, weathered by time perhaps, but unmistakable. Anala, he whispered, voice cracking. The name hung between them like a fragile promise. Would she understand? Her nose twitched as she inched closer, whiskers brushing the air. He knelt, heart in his throat, and held out a trembling hand. For a moment, nothing happened. Then her head dropped, heavy and warm against his palm. It was like touching sunlight after years underground. Could this reunion really be real? The crowd gasped as she leaned into him, eyes half closed in bliss. A low, purring rumble vibrated through her chest, a sound he knew better than any other. It was a hymn of joy sung across years of absence, and in that trembling vibration he felt every moment they'd lost melt away. What would happen next?
He stood, and she rose too, pressing her long body against his side, as if afraid he might vanish again.
He wrapped an arm around her neck, fingers tangling in the coarse mane framing her face. Her breath washed over him in warm, heavy gusts, like a living breeze telling him, I never forgot. Could anything separate them now? Behind them, the sun dipped low, gilding the clouds in fire. The clouds in fire. The enclosure's bars became invisible, fading into the golden haze of evening. He whispered stories of the outside world, of rainstorms he'd chased, of safaris he'd seen, of family he'd started without her. Without her. Each word seemed to ripple through her, her tail thumping in slow beats, as though keeping time with his memories. Would she ever forgive him for leaving? She stepped back a pace, head tilted, as if gauging his truth. Boo. In her eyes flickered a spark, curiosity, caution, and something deeper still, a longing for more. He held his breath, wondering whether the bond of trust they once shared could be rekindled. What challenge would come next? Without warning, she lunged, a playful, gentle nudge that sent him teetering. Laughter burst from his chest, echoing across the yard like bells on the wind. She pounced again, steadying him with a massive paw that pressed into his shoulder like a living weight. It was a dance they knew by heart, steps learned in sunlit mornings and dusty afternoons. How many times had they rehearsed this very moment in his dreams? He fell backward onto the straw-covered ground, and she sprawled across his legs, head resting on his chest. The world narrowed to the rhythm of her heartbeat under his hand. Was this heaven, or just a memory made flesh? A memory made flesh. High above, a lone bird cried out, sharp, solitary, reminding them both that life is measured in moments, not years. He closed his eyes against the sting of tears and whispered, I'm here now, Nala. I'm never leaving. The words floated into the dusk, carried away on the warm breeze that rustled through the tall grass. Could promises spoken in the twilight hold firm at sunrise? She lifted her head and met his gaze, a slow blink sealing their pact. Her eyes shone with a light he'd feared lost forever. Behind the gate, staff and visitors watched in awe, but in that shared look, it felt as though they were the only two souls on Earth. What adventures awaited them from this moment on? John rose to his feet, and she rose too, shaking off a few stray bits of straw. He extended a hand, and she offered her paw, a gesture they'd practiced countless times. As their friendship realigned like magnets pulled by an invisible force, he felt the world tilt back into balance. But you see, would the future hold as much joy as this reunion? He led her toward the open field beyond the enclosure. The grass there was tall and soft, ripe for running. With a playful growl, she bolted forward, dust kicking up behind her in a golden swirl. Funto? He chased after, sneakers pounding the earth, laughter blazing from his chest like wildfire. Could they outrun the years that tried to keep them apart? She skidded to a stop, looked over her shoulder, and let out a roar that echoed across the plains. And there, it was a song of freedom, of homecoming, of love that time could not dim. He slowed to a halt, chest heaving, and she bounded back, solid muscle and wild grace. When she crashed into him, they both went down in a tumble of limbs and laughter. What stories would they write together now that fate had given them a second chance? Nala rose and padded away, her sleek shape silhouetted against the sinking sun. He followed, stepping through the long grass, feeling the past brush against his skin like a gentle reminder. At the field's edge stood a small shelter. Inside, bowls of water and meat awaited her. But she paused before entering, glancing back at him with patient understanding. Would he finally stay by her side? He walked up to her slowly, knelt, and scooped up a handful of fresh meat from the bowl. So, from the bowl. Holding it out, he watched her jaws close around it with quiet satisfaction. Her whiskers trembled in delight, and she let out a soft grunt of contentment. In that simple act, feeding her by hand, he reaffirmed what had always been true. He was her caretaker, and she trusted him utterly. Oh, could love be simpler than this? Night fell quickly, the sky bleeding from crimson to indigo. Lanterns around the field flickered on, casting warm pools of light over the tall grass. He stood and brushed a stray lock of hair from his forehead, admiring her silhouette as she lapped at the water. The gentle ripples echoed his own steady breathing. Would their story end here, or was this only the beginning of something extraordinary? She finished drinking and rose to her full height, head cocked as if listening to some distant melody. Then, with a slow, deliberate gait, she padded toward him. He held out both hands, and she pressed her muzzle into his palms, closing her eyes in quiet trust. The hush of the night wrapped around them, soft and safe, as though the world itself had paused to watch this perfect reunion. What dreams would fill their nights from now on. John lowered his face to hers and whispered, "Let's stay together." Her eyes opened, wide, gleaming, brimming with understanding. Then, with one final, rumbling purr that seemed to shake the earth, she turned and walked into the shadows. Seatoes. He followed at her heels, stepping into a future they would share, paws and footprints, side by side. And as the last light faded behind them, the world held its breath once more, aware that love, when it is true, never fades, never forgets, and always finds its way home. Boom. Even as darkness deepened around them, the soft glow of the lanterns revealed every contour of Nala's powerful shoulders and every line of John's relieved smile. He paused at the threshold of her shelter, listening to the whisper of the night breeze rustling through the tall grass like a choir of voices welcoming them home. The scent of earth and distant wildflowers drifted in, mingling with the faint, soothing hum of cicadas. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small carved wooden whistle, the very one he'd made for her years ago, and blew a gentle note that quivered on the air. Instantly, her ears perked and for a moment time seemed to stretch like honey before she padded forward, eyes bright with recognition. What new adventures might that single, trembling note summon? Morning light crept in slowly, painting the field in pale gold. John sat cross-legged on the dew-damp grass, watching Nala circle him as she prepared for breakfast. Each breath she exhaled formed tiny vapor clouds in the cool dawn, ghosts of memories dancing between them. He spoke softly of the day ahead, of training sessions designed not to break her spirit, but to celebrate her strength, of walks beyond the enclosure so she might feel the open plains under her paws once more. She settled beside him, head resting atop his thigh, as if to say, "I'm ready." Could he possibly hope for a more perfect companion? By midday, the sun climbed high, and the world fell away until there was nothing but the two of them, trainer and lioness, learning anew how to move in harmony. With each step, each whispered command, each shared glance, he felt the fragile thread of trust weave itself into something unbreakable. As they strode together toward the horizon, the wind caught in Nala's mane, turning it to molten gold. And in that light, John saw not just an animal he loved, but a partner, an equal, a friend. And as their silhouettes merged against the sky, he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, storms or sunshine, trials or triumphs, they would face them side by side, paws and footprints forever intertwined.